Hello and welcome to Closing, Key Closing Techniques. And in case you're wondering, if you have just watched the other video about closing and why we do it, I have got other t-shirts and I do sometimes stand somewhere different. So let's have a look at what we are going to cover on this particular video. There's really only one key bullet point, and that is by the end of this session, you will have learned several of the key closing techniques that you could use with both clients and candidates throughout the recruitment process. Now, look, if you were to Google closing, the chances are you will get hundreds of techniques. Some of them have got some weird and wonderful names as well. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is to learn these ones. These ones are great for recruiters. They're good for people in sales in general. And the chances are, you might just stick with the first four that I'm going to talk to you about, and you might not ever have to come across these, but you need to have these techniques as part of your toolkit, as part of your armory. Now, for fear of losing some of you at this point, not everybody plays golf, but hopefully people understand that a golfer will carry a bag or have someone carry their bag for them, and they will have a selection of clubs, maybe up to 15 clubs in the bag. Now, they have 15 clubs because each club plays a different shot. And for me, those clubs represent different closing techniques. Each of these closing techniques, there will be a reason why you would use it and when you would use it. So you've got to have a good closing selection, the same as you've got to have a good club selection. Otherwise, you're not going to have a very successful round. So let's have a look at the first four, and I'll highlight them as I talk through them. Some of you will know the pre-close as, sometimes people call it the trial close. This is probably the most popular close you will ever use. And we know it's a pre-close because it has the word if in it. If I do this for you, will you do this for me? So you've pretty much been using the pre-close ever since you were a toddler. As soon as you could walk, you've been using this with your parents. So if I tidy my room up, can I have a sleepover at the weekend? So if I do eat my Brussels sprouts, can I have double portions of ice cream? So I'm not going to suggest we use that with our clients and our candidates, but with clients and candidates, it's fairly obvious. If I were to find you the ideal candidate, would you be prepared to offer 55,000? If I could arrange interviews for you next week, Mr. Candidate, could you do Wednesday at 10 o'clock? So the beauty of the pre-close is that we're testing for future commitment. It's a bit like a hypothetical question, but this is one way that you can be sure that you know how somebody's going to react. So pre-close, probably the most popular one, probably the most commonplace one you'll use. Then we have, as represented by the target, the direct close. There's no messing on this one. We're just going to go for a straightforward piece of commitment, yes or no. Do you want the job? Do you want to hire this person? Are you prepared to pay 55,000? Are you prepared to travel 50 minutes to an hour commute? That's it. It's a direct yes or no. I want a firm decision. I want to know exactly where I stand. Then you have a variation on that, which is the alternative close. And again, very popular one to use with both clients and candidates. So you could say, I've got interview slots next Wednesday at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Which one would you prefer? Now, what happens with an alternative choice close or alternative close is that you've just given them a choice of the two times on next Wednesday. They choose one of those. So what have we got? We've got commitment to one of those dates. And you could do exactly the same with the clients as well. I've got someone for you. Would you prefer to interview them Wednesday morning or Thursday afternoon? And again, if they commit to one of those dates, you've got agreement to them interviewing. Now, all of these can be used with what's called the diary close. The diary close, as the name suggests, we're closing for a date and a time, ideally. So you can use it as a pre-close, as a direct close, or even as an alternative close. So would you be able to meet with me next Wednesday at 10:30? That's it. That's a diary close, but that's also a direct diary close. Again, play around with these techniques, but make sure that you master them. So, pre-close, if I, will you? Direct, will you? Alternative, do you want this one or this one? And diary close, time and date. Now, one of the other closes I want to talk to you about is something called the balance sheet close, sometimes called the Ben Franklin close. It's called the Ben Franklin close because apparently this is how he used to make his political decisions. He would draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper, and on the left-hand side he would have reasons for making a particular decision, and on the right-hand side reasons against making a particular decision. So when would you use this close? You would use this close if, for example, in this example we use a candidate where the candidate, they're fairly non-committal, they're in two minds. I'm not sure if I want the job or not. So what we do is you can do this with the candidate over the phone. So this is how I would encourage you to do it. So candidates at the end of the phone, maybe you're speaking to them of an evening, get them to get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, on the left hand side the reasons for taking the job, and on the right hand side the reasons against taking the particular job. And then what we do is we focus on, for you, it'd be the left hand side. So we'll say to the candidate, so what was it that you said you wanted this job for? Now, if they said more money, in this example, more money, what you're then going to do is add to the list. And the red bits are the bits that I'm going to say. Oh, and you did mention that if you get more money, you'd be able to have that holiday you've always promised your wife and your kids. And you also mentioned that you'd be able to clear a lot of your debts as well. So we get them to list those out. From 1 point, we've now got 3. So apart from money, what else did you say you would take this job for? Well, it's nearer to home. So that's what the candidate is saying, nearer to home. And then we say, and you did mention actually when I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago that that would give you more family time. And because it's closer to home, it's going to be cheaper on the rail fare and you'll have less commuting stress. So hopefully you can see what we're doing here. Every time they mention something, I make the list a little bit bigger, but I'm not making any of this stuff up. I've got this from my previous candidate qualification. I haven't made this stuff up. So what happens is we go down that left-hand side and we get all of the positives out. You might end up with maybe 15, 16, 18 reasons for taking the job. Now, potentially you could close off there. You can look at the list and say, wow, I've got 18 reasons for accepting this job. Well, I know if it was me, it would be a very easy decision. Now, you could just leave it there and the candidate might say, yeah, do you know what? You're absolutely right. Yeah, go ahead and accept the offer on my behalf. Or there might still be some reservations, in which case, let's move over to the reasons against. Okay, look, we've got these 18 reasons for. So what is exactly stopping you from making this decision? Now at this point, remember, on the left-hand side, we were happy to chip away and add. On the right-hand side, zip, nada, don't say anything. So what were the reasons that are stopping you from taking this job? Well, I've got some quite strong relationships here, okay? And well, and you know, it's going to be new surroundings as well for me, okay? Now, they will struggle to come up with maybe 2 or 3. Now, the beauty of this close now is that you can compare the 18 reasons on the right to the 2 against. The other beauty of this is, because they might say, yeah, but these 2 reasons outweigh the importance of the other 18. But at least I've got the reservations out in the open. Now they're out in the open, I can deal with them. And in fact, these 2 here, relationships and new surroundings, that would be a great time for you to use what's called the feel, felt, found. And if you've watched the video on objection handling, I would have covered that on there. But in this case, I would say, look, I completely understand how you feel. You know, you've obviously developed some great relationships since you've been there. In fact, I felt exactly the same way when I left a bank after 15 years. But what I found was that when I started in my new organisation, I developed and forged some much stronger relationships. And the ones that I did have in my previous organisation, I still had relationships with them. So you can use the feel, felt, found to demonstrate a bit of empathy and hopefully influence their thinking to a positive outcome. And then we have something, I did tell you that some of these closes have some stupid names. Well, here's one of them. It's called the reduced to the ridiculous. It is only ever used when money is involved. And in this particular example, the offer has been made by the client of 60,000, but the candidate wants 62. And they're not going to budge. They say, look, 2,000, I want 2,000 extra. So look, the difference is 2,000. When you break that down over the course of a year, that is after tax and insurances, it's probably about 1,400. Then break it down to per month, then break it down to per week, then break it down to per day. And in this case, we're talking about £4.20 a day. Now, depending on when you're watching this and what you buy, that's probably what, you know, a coffee and a sticky bun half a packet of cigarettes, it's not a great deal. Even £30 per week, that's not even half a tank of diesel for my car. So what you're doing is you're getting them to see that, effectively you're turning this job down for something quite small and insignificant. Now, obviously in this example, the reduction has to be relevant to the salary. If this was somebody on an 18,000 salary, then they might be thinking, actually, that's a lot of money. So it has to be relevant to the salary levels. And don't get me wrong, you are exposed to this type of close and this technique pretty much on a day-to-day basis. Advertisers do it all the time. You look at some of the charity adverts on TV. They don't just say to you, give me £36 right now. No, they don't. They say £3 a month. For as little as £2 a month, you can have a child educated for a year. You can have mosquito nets. You could get a brand new car on your driveway for as little as £199 a month. You can have life assurance for as little as 50p a day. And I'm thinking, I've got 50p right now. Let's have a day's worth. I'm having a bad day. So reduce to the ridiculous. You only use it when there is money involved. There is another one called the walking down the street close. And again, use this particularly when a candidate is in two minds. Oh, I'm not quite sure. Now, the beauty of this close is that you use a hypothetical scenario. If the candidate is still fairly non-committal, use this. Say to them, well, look, okay, Bob, let's assume that you are unemployed. You're unemployed and you're walking down the middle of the street, and on the left-hand side, you've got your current job that you've been there for 5 years, they haven't invested in technology, you don't really like some of the team members. And on the right-hand side, you've got this new opportunity where you'll get training, development, uncapped earning potential, and a great support and infrastructure team, and a really outgoing, lively bunch to work with. Now, under those circumstances, which one would you go for? Now, hopefully I wasn't being too subtle with this technique, but in order to do this successfully, you've got to know the candidate's reasons for leaving and their motivations to move. If you don't know these, you can't really influence the walking down the street close. But the beauty of this is you take them to a neutral point first of all. So you say, Bob, let's assume that you are unemployed. Now they can make an objective decision. But I don't know if you noticed anything in my tone. So, and on the left-hand side, you've got your current job, and then you started telling them about their reasons for leaving. But on the right-hand side, the new opportunity. So I'm trying to make it obvious for the video, but hopefully this will work for you as well. It's a great one to use because you take them to an objective point of view, and now they can look at both. But you're only using reasons for leaving and motivations to move, no other techniques. Then you have something called the bank manager close. Now, this is when, for example, you're asking your candidate to maybe take a bit of a drop. Look, and you might know of people, or maybe even you've done it yourself, you've moved jobs and you've taken either a sideways move in salary or you've taken a drop in salary. And a lot of people do it, and they do it for a very good reason. It's because the opportunity is better in other respects, in other regards. So for example, if I'm talking to maybe a contractor and they are on $450 a day, and I'm asking them to take a 6-month contract at only $400 a day, I might say to the contractor, look, if you take $400 a day, with what you're going to learn on this is going to make you look fantastic on your CV. 6-12 months time, there's no reason why you can't then start to command something like £500 a day. So effectively what you're doing with the bank manager close is you're asking them to take a bit of a hit right now, but invest in their future worth. It's a bit like putting money into a bank. You'd like to think with favourable interest rates that it will grow. And then I'm just going to talk to you about one more close, and that is the takeaway close. This one comes with its own set of rules, and this one you only use as a last resort. You only use this if you are not getting any form of commitment from the client or the candidate from the other closes. So if you really are sort of pulling your hair out, you think, right, I'm going to do the takeaway close. So the first rule is don't threaten them. Don't threaten them that something bad will happen. Well, if you don't take this offer, no one's going to want to talk to you again. You'll be blacklisted, right? We don't threaten them. Second one, do it with the full intention of taking it away. Don't play with this. And the third thing is don't ask permission. So don't say this. This is an example of how not to do it. Okay, well look, Bob, you don't sound all that motivated. Do you want me to go back to the client this afternoon and say that you're not really interested? All right, first of all, it sounds a bit vague, it sounds a bit woolly, I don't sound very assertive, and I'm still giving them a bit of a choice. So this is what I should do instead. This is where you do a takeaway close properly. Okay, Bob, look, it sounds to me as if you're not ready to make a decision, you haven't made a decision, you don't sound as motivated as you were before. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to the client this afternoon, I'm going to withdraw you from the process, and he can focus on the other candidates that I put forward. What is it you'd like to see in your next role that you didn't see in this one? And that's it. So what can the candidate do at this point? Well, the candidate can either say, no, I do want it. Brilliant. So we've still got a tick. We've still got a potential placement there. Or they might just agree with you and say, yeah, you're absolutely right. Now I have lost my motivation. Hooray. At least I've got a yes or a no. I know where I stand, the candidate knows where they stand, and also the client knows where they stand. So for me, I think the action points are fairly simple on this one. Learn these techniques by name. Know when to use them, because some will be when they're not sure, some will be with money, some you're just looking for future commitment. So learn them by name and practice with them. Oh, and by the way, these techniques you've probably been using quite a lot all your life anyway. Implement them at every opportune moment. And if you've watched the previous video about why we need to close and what we need to close them on, there's plenty of things that we need to close clients and candidates on. So review any existing pipeline that you have, review any existing clients and candidates, and make sure that every single one of those doors in that placement corridor are firmly shut, and then everyone has a clear run through to the Moneyville. Anyway, good luck with your closing, and I'll see you in the next session.